Our next speaker is the founder of the People's Party, a new political party formed in the aftermath of the 2016 elections, in which the Democratic primary was rigged against Bernie Sanders. Nick Brana is the main organizer of the Rage Against the War Machine. It was a historic protest in Washington, D.C. on Feb 19, the biggest anti-war protest in 20 years. CPI was proud to sponsor the demonstration and hold a reception afterwards with Scott Ritter. Nick Brana is also responsible for nudging Cornel West to run for president. And formally launching his campaign just weeks ago. Please welcome Nick Brana.
Hey everyone, great to be with you. Caleb, always for putting these events together. It's so wonderful, whether it's Chicago, DC, here. It's great to get together. And, you know, I guess, you know, Chris, you said so much of what I wanted to say. So I'm going to try to add to what you said, because I was thinking, you know, as I thought about this and Caleb told me the theme, you know, I thought of so many of the different examples. This two-tiered legal system that we have. The law under capitalism, as it exists, is essentially the instrument by which the rich protect their wealth and their power against the poor. And that's all that it is. And one of the greatest examples of that, like Chris said, is the drug war. The drug war that was initiated both the United States that fought both sides of the drug war. And when you actually, you know, when you really study so many of the actions of capitalism, you see this model time and time again, that you have, because death, destruction, misery is GDP, you see capitalism fighting both sides of an issue at the same time. You see it Halliburton destroying a country, and then the same company is rebuilding the country, winning the contracts for both. You see in the case of the drug war that the Nixon administration starting the drug war because they decided, well, geez, we're shipping so much labor overseas at this point, we're getting cheaper prices, you know, the ascendancy of neoliberalism, we can produce cheaper over there. You know, those workers aren't going to demand higher wages, try to unionize. So there was a superfluous element of society, superfluous labor. And it was, of course, mostly black Americans. And so what are we going to do with it? We're not profitizing these people well enough anymore. You know, they're not producing for us under the logic of capitalism. So let's invent a new industry, mass incarceration. And at the same time, we have this problem, of course, that they're getting too rambunctious. They're challenging the war. They're challenging poverty. They're challenging the ruling class. They're challenging capitalism. That's not allowed. So let's assassinate some of their leaders, and then let's introduce drugs into their communities and start a drug war to criminalize them and their movements. And we're going to profit off of the trafficking of those drugs that the CIA did into the United States. And at the same time, we're also going to profit off of the incarceration of these people with private prisons and also other prisons. And then while they're there, we might as well reinvent slavery and have them work for pennies on the dollar at the same time. That's the legal system in the United States. That's a snapshot. All of the examples that Chris brought up also in the financial industry, all of the examples that Marnie and Jose brought up also in housing, other examples of how the law is a weapon against the people of this country as long as it is in the hands of the ruling class. And an example that I want to add to, because I think this was one that you didn't touch as much upon, Chris, is war. War, under capitalism, a lot of the biggest industries are the most criminal, non-productive, and destructive industries. War being the chief among them, consuming now half of the discretionary budget of this country. but that's only one. And of course, war is legalized murder. It is taking an action that if anybody was to commit, they would be imprisoned potentially for life or executed in some states, and then stating that this action is legal when committed in mass with weapons that are far beyond what is available to anybody on the street in a systematic way. Another example, finance. Finance also is a weapon of predatory capitalism, as you were describing, Chris, by placing everyone's wealth, forcing their pensions into it, forcing their wealth into it, and then gambling with that wealth. And then, of course, being insured and protected by the government and the Fed, causing inflation with bailouts that are going to protect them so there's no risk involved in the gambling. The risk is borne by us, and the law defends that. The risk is borne when we lose our homes. It's borne when our pensions are at risk. It's when our wages collapse. Another industry, advertising. Advertising, as it is constructed now, is essentially one of the most manipulative and insidious things, and it is completely unproductive as well. Completely unproductive and destructive. As it exists, and it has become so refined and powerful and honed, it is the corporate study, especially after Freud, of human psychology and how you can create desires, wants, insecurities in people and root those deeply in their psyches, appeal to their unconscious in a way that tells them that you are insufficient. But if you had this product, maybe you would be better. You would feel better. What you need in your life is this product. And you don't just need it once, you need it every year. Because we're also going to produce with planned obsolescence so that everything is going to break down after a year, so you have to keep buying it. You need it over and over and over again. So we have, imagine the depravity of a system that produces that is geared around bombarding people day in and day out and telling them, you're not okay as you are. You need this, and then maybe you'll be all right. But right now, you don't have enough friends. You don't look the right way. You're not rich enough. You don't have all of the metrics of success under this system, But maybe if you get this, we'll make you feel better. And is it a wonder that so many people turn to opioids out of desperation to escape, even momentarily, or sometimes permanently? I want to talk about another part of this system that I have the unfortunate privilege of being having a window to, and that is one of the greatest forms of legal control over the system as it exists, and protecting and insulating everything that I've described and that Jose described, and Marnie and Chris, everybody, and that is the Democrats pretend to be against voter suppression, right? They say voter suppression is the worst thing, and the Republicans are this great culprit of voter suppression. The greatest form of voter suppression, the greatest form of disenfranchisement in this country is the two-party system.
Yeah. That's it.
Woo.
And the greatest defenders of the two-party system is the Democratic Party and the duopoly as a whole, but especially the Democratic Party. So when they go out there and they argue that poor people, black people, brown people don't have they're being disenfranchised by the Republicans. That is true in the narrowest sense. But then in the biggest sense, through a series of an arcane legal maze that they have constructed, and which I have become very familiar with in the work that I do at the People's Party, through ballot access laws, which they have created, which Richard Winger, the top expert in ballot access in the country, anybody who's ever spoken with him, he's an encyclopedia of ballot access. It's amazing. So he says that the United States has ballot access laws to limit the formation of other parties that don't exist in any other country except dictatorships. That's basically the bar in this country. In other countries, you have, the norm is a multi-party system. Of course, you never hear that in the media. You never hear that, so you grow accustomed to the idea that, oh, well, two-party systems, perhaps that's normative globally. It's not. Other countries have systems that involve multi-member districts, ranked choice voting. These changes in the architecture of the electoral system result in a multi-party system. It's just a product of how you structure it. And the Democrats especially, but both parties, they love to complain that this third party or that third party or Cornel West or whoever it is going to spoil the election. And there was a poll done already that is an Emerson College poll. We're proud to have launched the Cornel West campaign, where there was a poll done by Emerson College that showed that without him in the race, Biden's winning. And then with him in the race, Biden's losing. That's enough. Good.
Yeah.
You know what that means? That means that Biden better start talking about providing health care and housing and food and everything to working people. Otherwise, he has only himself to blame for losing.
That's right.
Only himself. The other thing is, too, I went to this great conference in Austin, Texas, called the Independent National Convention, about 3 months ago, and was invited to give a talk after Rage Against the War Machine, opposing war. And at that conference, it became clear also, there was the opening panel was about how, with many different parties, libertarians were there, Angela McArdle, their chair, who's been just a great organizing partner in Rage Against the War Machine, and other parties. And it was so clear, how much I think we had in common as far as wanting to change that structure. And that's reflected in how many Americans also want to change and eliminate that structure of voter suppression. Even though, to me it is amazing that there are 71% of Americans that want a major third party in this country, without even having had the experience of that, without having any meaningful connection to that in this country, knowledge of what it looks like, with people's only experience with third parties being parties that get in the single digits in every election, that are written off every year as fringe. Still 71% of people say that we need a third party in this country. And half the country's now independent. So there's as many independents as there are Democrats and Republicans combined. The two parties are being liquidated as we speak. So there's a great opening now, I think, and add a little bit about what we think is possible as the People's Party in this very election cycle. Because something is happening. There is a lot more talk about independent candidates. There's a lot more, there's even, it's not just, Cornel West running or whomever's going to run for the Libertarian Party. There's more than that. There is, Kennedy recently said that basically Biden can't, it's not a guarantee he's going to endorse Biden. If we can push Kennedy to leave, that's another huge chunk coming out of the Democratic Party. And he should do that. And the Republican Party, because exactly, he's got a lot of support across the board. And that would be a great thing. Cornell's pulling a bunch out also.
Yep.
There's this other third party, which I'd be very interested to hear, actually. How many people have heard of No Labels? Okay. Okay, so No Labels is basically an establishment third party. It's a neoliberal third party formed by these like disaffected Democrat and Republican donors, and they think that the problem is that in America we don't have enough centrism. We don't have enough of the establishment. So we need, but they think, these people literally, they think that Biden's not establishment enough. They're like, he's too radical. They're like, Biden's too radical. It's nuts. It's nuts. So they want to form a third party to make sure. So this is a faction of the elite, that is like, no, we're not fucking the people hard enough. We need to fuck them harder. It's like. So this faction of the elite, it's like we could squeeze a little more out of them. It's like there's still some areas, there's still some pockets of wealth.
Stop using grease.
There you go. There you go. So they want to. So it's funny because there's kind of like this intra-elite war happening now over whether No Labels should be allowed to run or whether they should run what they call a unity ticket, which means that they're going to find the most despicable corporate Democrat and the most despicable corporate Republican, and they're going to put them together on a ticket, and they're going to be like, look, now we represent everybody because we have Joe Manchin, and I don't even know who they're going to fucking get as a Republican. But that's who they're thinking. Maybe Kristen Sinema, but she's an independent now, so I don't know if they consider. But to my delight, the polls that like the Washington Post and Third Way and New York Times are like they're writing articles against this other group and this like war that they're having. Those articles. They're sharing polls where they're like, look, if you do this, you're going to draw more from the Democrats. You're going to draw more from the Democrats because, and the real reason, which they never say, of course, is that the Republican Party has at least been like partially seized by a pseudo-populism, So it's like there's some populist energy there, but the Democrat Party is just like 100% deep state party. Like it's like even the dissidents in the Democratic Party, AOC and Bernie, right? Yeah, it's like. All they do is reinforce the establishment. Yep. So, but I was so happy to see it's like, okay, even the Third Way candidate is going to draw more, of course, from the Democratic Party. So if you've got Cornel West, you got Kennedy, you've got the Third Way candidate, and perhaps other candidates. If you've got that, then maybe you have the Democrat vote being split so many ways that we're destroying that party.
Yeah! That's right! Break the duopoly!
If we can break the duopoly in this election cycle, it will be a historic achievement. It hasn't been done in 150 years.
Let's do it!
Since the early Republican Party. Since abolition. So the early people's, the first People's Party, 1890s, they came close. And then William Jennings Bryan betrayed them and joined the Democrats again. But we can do it this time. We can do it this time if it's being split so many different ways. And I think if we can do that, the duopoly only survives by virtue of like mutual hatred. It's like nobody votes for the parties in this country. They vote against the parties. They vote against the Democrat. They vote against the Republican because they hate one or the other like marginally more. But we've reached a point, I think, where we could change that. We could break that. And if we do, it'll be an incredible accomplishment, and it will get to addressing, finally, it could potentially open this country up to a multi-party system. At that conference in Austin, I talked to someone who is really active in the ranked choice voting movement. And he said, you know what? The most effective strategy that we've discovered to getting ranked choice voting and creating a new electoral system is when you spoil their elections. When you say you're willing to spoil their elections, like for example, Cornel West, and if Kennedy goes independent or something like that afterwards, then they will pass RCV, and the Democrats control 17 states, governorship, state houses. So in 17 states, the Democrats could tomorrow pass ranked choice voting and implement that for 2024. So if Cornel West and others start making that argument and they say, it's your fault, you want to avoid this, pass RCV. Then we could start getting the mass passage of RCV. We have it in 2 states now, ranked choice voting, which opens the door to a multi-party system. But if we can get it in mass numbers of states like that, out of sheer preservation, self-preservation from the Democrats as an incentive structure, then we can really blow up the duopoly as well.
Yeah.
So I think we have some very big, potentially exciting opportunities in this election cycle. We're excited to be a part of them as the People's Party. We're excited also to be working with everybody here who is at the forefront of pushing for this, and excited to be breaking that kind of legal, capitalistic stranglehold that exists over this country that creates this 2-tiered system of imposing the law of the rich upon the poor.
Let's go.
So that's what we're working towards, and thank you so much again, Caleb, everybody for having me.
Nick Brana gets better and better each time I listen to him. Oh my gosh. I first heard him in Chicago, then in DC, and now here. Wow.